It's
very shiny.
Very shiny. I don't think we came up the right way.
Have a seat. Thank you guys for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we want to talk about a lot of different things, but Eva, I'm going to start with you. As you guys all know, it's been kind of an intense MPW summit this year, and I know we somehow have managed to create waves on both sides of this political spectrum now, so maybe we did something right. I'm not sure, but there's been a lot of press and pressure, and there's been pressure on you to withdraw from this summit. And so I want to start out by addressing that head on and ask you why you chose to come.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, I am Latino. I'm from the Latino community. And yeah, you all had invited a speaker who is, responsible for one of the greatest and ongoing human rights disasters in our country. And she took this stage. And this stage is normally reserved for women who have innovation and ideas that are changing the world for the better. And so the reason I showed up is because I didn't want her to be the only voice in the room. She doesn't get to take away my platform. She doesn't get to take away my voice, right? No. And I think it's, this stage has hosted so many amazing women, and then you see her yesterday. My hope was that she would come to apologize, because her legacy will be putting children in cages. That's going to be her legacy. So you're up here trying to rehabilitate your image. Honey, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, because what you did was atrocious. And I think that for women who are mothers, to rip a child out of people's arms and to stand up here and say, well, people broke the law. Seeking asylum is not law breaking. That's what our country has always done. And I applaud that interviewer for pressing her for facts. We are living in a world where facts are going unchecked. And I heard some of the feedback from the women were like, oh, the interviewer was too tough. No, you have to seek the truth. And what she was saying was not true. She was not a cog in a machine. She was not following laws. She was responsible for this horrific human rights crisis. I mean, she's just the policy. She was responsible for this policy, and it's she should be ashamed of taking the stage that really should be applauding women and what they're doing.
Well, I hope whatever our opinion is on that interview, I hope that everybody in the room can agree that we really appreciate you being here. So thank you for that. Okay.
Bella and I have a lot to say.
Good. Okay, let's
We
get
didn't want
there.
anybody to
We have
take
a
our
lot to say.
platform away.
Right. Well, nobody's going to take away our microphone. You need to be here to have those discussions and to challenge ideology and to challenge each other. And I think, Bella and I being in the media, we have an important role in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's get to it. And I really want to get to your questions, so I want to leave plenty of time for that towards the end. But you guys both of you have had really amazing careers and have such interesting backgrounds. And so I'm going to ask you another question, and then we'll get to you, I promise.
Bella's way more interesting, by the way.
But way more interesting.
You're both very interesting. So, Eva, you're 9th generation American. I don't know if people realize that. You're from South Texas, a state that used to be part of Mexico. And when you spoke at the yay Texas, or yay Mexico, whatever you were clapping for, or both. When you spoke at the 2016 Democratic National Convention, you said, my family never crossed a border, the border crossed us. Which is an awesome line. So how has this, we're all products of our history, right? And our families and that trajectory. How has that shaped your career? How has it shaped the content that you've been in and that you're now producing and directing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So many people don't understand the history that Hispanics have in this country. And so when you are Mexican American like I am, we constantly straddle that hyphen. Because I'm 100% Mexican and I'm 100% American at the same time. And so to navigate that is is difficult in this time in our country because of an unconscious bias that we are partly responsible for in the media. People of color, Hispanics, Black people, women, anybody who's been marginalized are usually on screen depicted in very narrow ways. And when you see those images repeated over and over and over and over, you begin to form an idea and an opinion on what you think that community is, what you think a woman is, what you think Latino is. And unfortunately, Latino has become synonymous with illegal, criminal, dangerous. And so my goal as a producer, as a director, as a content creator, is to change that perception and produce with the purpose of changing that unconscious bias in Hollywood.
And I think also what people don't realize is what Eva's talking about. When you see those depictions in media in different places in the US, right, Hollywood content travels all over the world. So, right, we do sort of perpetuate, right, when you look at, the roles of sort of women and what those stereotypes look like, we also then basically export all of our content. So we have to be super mindful of what those representations are.
Speaking of an international perspective, so Bela, you're of Indian descent. You were born in London, lived in Zambia, and moved to the US at age 9. So very international perspective. And how has that, now you're overseeing international original content at Netflix. So how has that global background and perspective helped you in your role today?
So I think what was interesting for me, because I have that background and have just, a frame of reference and a perspective, which was sort of different when I sort of went into Hollywood 23 years ago, there was definitely, there was no Indian people and there was very few brown people anywhere, really, when I got into the business. And it's been interesting for me because I always, growing up in an Indian family from Africa, always sort of felt a little bit more of the world. I think sort of a little bit what Eva was saying, right? I was definitely Indian and I love my culture and my heritage, but I grew up in America for the most part. And so I really had this, how do you blend both of those things? And I always felt kind of a part of lots of those. So when I was at Netflix and they asked me to take on international, which basically means, it does not mean, which some people think, like it's a CIA show that we shoot in a bunch of different countries and that feels international. That is not what it means. It actually means we go into countries and we make non-English local originals with local filmmakers in all of these countries. That's what it means. So it really means going into a country, finding an authentic local story and telling that. And what was exciting for me is when they asked me to do it, it just felt such a natural extension of who I was, because the trick is also to go into these countries and you can't feel imperialistic. It can't be like, oh, let's show the West culture in the West way. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to go in and really tell authentic stories in these countries. And I had enormous respect for it because I don't feel that, the West is better, and again, I think growing up Indian and sort of feeling that push-pull, I can sort of really get my back up against that too. So it's been really fun and a very natural extension of who I am to go into countries and really just find amazing filmmakers, because they're everywhere, and really tell those stories.
So I grew up in Israel and I watched The Cosby Show growing up, and everything was dubbed, and I swear to God, I thought the Cosby family was Israeli. It was like a shock. But what content travels? And like, I get what you're saying, you're making it authentic, but there are these universal themes, right? In what both of you do. What content travels? What are those universal themes?
I think when we look at storytelling, so when we do it sort of at Netflix, it really is to say, what is the best, most authentic version of this story? And usually, right, when you go into a country, you're not trying to make it global, you're just really trying to make the most authentic version of that story in this country for these people. And what you find is those shows, because they're authentic in themes, universal themes of marriage and relationships and family and loss, and all of these things connect us, right? And so you will see it dubbed or subtitled, and you can watch it from any different country, but those themes are similar and people just connect to those. And so it's not a specific kind of content that travels. It's not like family dramas travel sort of, right, more than
horror,
action,
nothing.
Horror.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It really is, if it's a really great show or movie and it really connects to people in that country, it usually connects to people in other countries.
Are you thinking globally when you pick projects either to act in or to produce?
Yes, Bella and I have had these conversations many times, where I'll find a story. Somebody brought me an Argentinian story, and it was a white filmmaker, and I said, well, it's going to be in Spanish, right? Because I mean, that just made sense. And they were like, oh, I didn't think of that. I was like, I've always lived in a global community, just like Bella. I've traveled so much, and I think once we all realize we live in a global community, we don't live in Texas, we don't live in the United States. We live in a global community, then you are more responsible with what your projects, what you're going to dedicate your time and energy to. And so, yeah, I think I agree with her. I think, if you look back at Desperate Housewives, it traveled so well because it was all those themes. It was family, and it was divorce, and it was relationships, and people go, oh yeah, that they saw themselves in it.
And I was saying, I've worked with Eva for a long time now, and what's always been interesting, sort of the conversations we've had, is that from very early on, Eva was always interested about the business of it, right? You were always sort of asking before. I mean, now it feels like it's a conversation we have, just sort of much more sort of openly and publicly, but that was a long time ago, and it was always who is this for, and do we have representation, and are we really reaching people sort of globally? And you were very ahead of that conversation.
Thank you, Bella.
And that was important.
And you both are very actively promoting women storytellers in different ways. Eva, I didn't realize you also have done research and work on women in STEM. And in 2013, you actually completed a master's degree in Chicano studies, but your thesis was titled Success Stems, as in STEM, from Diversity, the Value of Latinas in STEM Careers. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose to concentrate your thesis on that and spend time on it?
When I was getting my master's, my cohort was 20 other colleagues, and 19 of them were doing their thesis on immigration, and I was like, I'm doing my thesis on immigration. And then somebody said, is that going to be your life's work? And I said, no, I really want to do something in education. And so just academically to find the need of papers that prove something that people don't know. And so when I researched, there was no, very few, I think 1% of STEM jobs are filled by Latinas. And then you contrast that with the fastest growing demographic in the United States are Latinos. Which means they're going to be the future workforce of not only this country, of the world. And then you contrast that with, we are the economic engine of the United States. There are industries solely dependent upon immigrant labor. That is not just agriculture. So if you look at anybody who comes out of college, if you are in any STEM field, there are 2 to 3 jobs waiting for them. If they are in a different major, there are 3 to 4 people waiting for that job. Right, and so if you just think about the economic imperative of making sure we prepare the future workforce, which is no doubt going to be Latino.
Okay. Questions from the audience for Eva and Bella? Got one over here. There's a microphone coming to you. If you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Asahi Pompey from Goldman Sachs. Thrilled you're here. Question for you. Content creators often have stories that they want to tell that haven't been told. What's a story on women that you want to get told that is not being told currently?
All of them.
Yes. There's a lot of them.
There's so many. Yeah. I actually, Bella, you should produce this. Netflix should do it. People don't know. There was a story during the Civil War, how many women fought as men and how many black women disguised themselves as men to fight, and then to vote. They dressed as men. And every time, this was maybe 5-7 years ago, I was pitching it, and every single man in the room was like, nobody wants to see women soldiers. And I was like, but this is history. This happened, and these people are real. And I remember it was very interesting because there were women on both sides. There were women for the Confederates that I was like, there was a Latina who was funding the Confederates, and I was like, a Latina? And I just thought, what a fascinating character, and for it to be true. And that's just one. My point being, I want to show more stories of how women contributed to this country specifically, but also just there are complexities which are not really explored enough, right?
Yeah, and what we're doing is, when we go into a lot of these countries and we're making local original shows, we're really trying to find female storytellers, female creators, and in some places there's just not that many sort of female showrunners to do TV shows. And we have really made it, a very purposeful thing. And, in Italy, we have a new show coming out that is all female directors, all female writers, and it has a lot of sort of interesting female themes with very complex characters, and not just all nice girls. It's a very, it's complicated women, and we have many, we have a new show coming out of Africa that has a female showrunner, and we're really trying to go into these countries and give this platform and this voice to female creators, because I think then you're gonna see many more of those stories and much more representation that way, because they have to be sort of on the behind the camera side also of being able to sort of tell those stories. And we have a very strong slate in the next couple years coming out by going into these communities and really tapping into and finding and giving opportunity to female creators.
Got a question over here. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Ana Maria Chavez with the National Council on Aging. Bela, Eva, thank you for being here. I know you came across town from the Latino Summit on the Hill. Thank you for your service to MALDEF as well. It's important that we're in these discussions. I've been coming to this event for several years, and the reason I'm here is because the ladies in the room are our partners, and they're going to support us as we move forward. These issues are difficult for everyone, but as you said, our voice is necessary. So what do you need from these women leaders to ensure all voices are seen and heard?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually, thank you for that, because we do need our, for the Latino community and for people of color, we need our white female allies. I need you to care as much about this issue as we do in our community. I think the main thing for me, for women in general, if you're in a leadership position, say yes. Say yes to that person who does not have the experience, who does not have the body of work that she's trying to apply for. Be the first line on her resume that says you hired her, mentor her, believe in her. Say yes to somebody with a different perspective, with a different language, with a different skin color. Say yes. That is your job, is to say yes. And for women in this room who are not in leadership positions, who are looking for that opportunity and chance, say no, right? No to that door that closed in your face. No to the person who says you're not going to do it, you can't do it, you don't have the experience, you don't have the credentials. Say, no, I'm going to do it. And so that's your homework for both leaders and non-leaders.
Well, we wanted to close the program with an uplifting note, and you guys really delivered. So I, again, so appreciate both of you being here with us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Good job.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you over there.